Victor's voice was sharp, cutting through the haze of my anger and humiliation. Judith thinks she can humiliate you into submission. She's playing checkers while you're about to play chess. I took a shaky breath, wiping at my swollen eyes. I don't know how to fix this, Victor. They turned the entire business community against me in one night. Victor let out a dry chuckle. Aurora, do you really think a room full of people who've done business with you for the past year are going to turn on you because Judith threw a tantrum? Don't let the theatrics fool you. The smart ones will wait to see how you respond. My fingers tightened around my phone. Then I need to respond. I wasn't going to let Judith and Lauren rewrite my father's legacy with their lies. This wasn't about money. This was about everything I had sacrificed to protect what he built. They wanted to make me the villain? Fine. I would give them a story they'd never forget. I need a full audit of company financials, I said, my voice steady now. If Judith and Lauren are this desperate, they're hiding something. I want every expense, every withdrawal, every questionable transaction under a microscope. Victor hummed in approval. Now you're thinking like Edward. That's when the idea struck me. I had been playing defense, but not anymore. And Victor? Make sure to leak that we're reviewing the financials for discrepancies. I want the rumor mill running by morning. I could practically hear his smirk over the phone. Now that is a move worthy of a haze. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the rear-view mirror. My lip was still trembling, but my eyes had a fire I hadn't seen in a long time. Judith wanted a war. She just got one. You strike back harder. I slammed the trunk shut, adrenaline replacing every ounce of humiliation I'd felt earlier. Judith had underestimated me. She thought I'd slink away, licking my wounds while she rewrote history. But she forgot one thing. My father raised me to be a strategist, not a victim. And tonight, I was about to remind everyone exactly who I was. Bernard's SUV roared down the nearly empty streets as we made our way back to the hotel. Inside, the gala was still in full swing. The grand ballroom, once a battlefield where I had been ambushed, was about to become my stage. I took a deep breath, smoothing the front of my dress as I stepped inside, the weight of the binders in my hands grounding me. The room quieted almost instantly as I entered. Whispers rippled through the crowd, eyes narrowing with barely concealed contempt. Judith, basking in the attention at the center of it all, turned just in time to see me approaching. Her triumphant smirk flickered, just for a second. "Changed your mind about leaving, dear?" she taunted, voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Come to admit your mistake?" I smiled, calm, collected. "No, Judith. I came to correct yours." I gestured to Bernard and his associates, who wasted no time distributing the binders to each table. The guests flipped them open, eyes widening as they skimmed the evidence. Court rulings, financial growth reports, employee testimonials. It was all there, laid out in cold, hard facts. The carefully constructed illusion Judith had spun began to unravel before her eyes. Lauren's smug expression melted into confusion as she saw her own documented refusals to take part in the company. I turned back to Judith, whose face had gone a shade paler than her champagne. These binders contain every legal document proving my father's will was executed exactly as he intended. They also show how I've not only honored his wishes but expanded Hayes Manufacturing beyond anything he could have imagined. But more importantly, I stepped closer, lowering my voice just enough to make her lean in. They prove you're nothing more than a bitter woman throwing a tantrum because you didn't get your way. Judith's lips parted, a sharp inhale the only sound she could manage. I didn't wait for her to recover. I turned to the guests, lifting my chin. You all heard Judith's accusations tonight, and I'm sure some of you were eager to believe them. But here's the truth. My father chose me to lead Hayes Manufacturing not out of sentiment, but because I earned it. The same way I've earned the trust of this company, our employees, and our investors. I won't apologize for that, and I certainly won't let anyone take it from me. A murmur ran through the crowd. People glanced at each other, flipping through pages of undeniable proof, realizing they had been played. Someone at the back began clapping, then another. The applause swelled, hesitant at first, then growing louder. Judith's carefully composed mask cracked. "You think this changes anything?" she hissed, stepping closer. "You may have won tonight, but I'll—" "Do what?" I cut her off, my voice cool. "Lose another court case? Ruin what's left of your reputation?" I leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. "You lost. Before you even started, Judith. The only person you humiliated tonight was yourself." Her eyes burned with fury, but she had nothing left to say. I stepped back, gave a small nod to Bernard, and turned on my heel, walking away as the applause continued. The tide had turned. Judith had come for war. She just never expected to lose. The room froze as my father's voice filled the ballroom, strong despite the weight of his illness. "If you are watching this, it means my worst fear has come true, that my wife and stepdaughter have tried to take what does not belong to them. Let me be perfectly clear. Hayes Manufacturing belongs to my daughter, Aurora. She has the intelligence, the vision, and most importantly, the integrity to lead this company forward. I did not make this decision lightly. I made it because she earned it." A sharp inhale from somewhere in the crowd. Someone whispered, "Oh my God!" But I didn't take my eyes off Judith. Her face had drained of color, her fingers clutching the stem of her champagne glass, like a lifeline. The video continued, my father's voice, unwavering. "Judith, Lauren, I know you will fight this. I know you believe you are entitled to what I built, but the truth is you were never interested until you saw dollar signs. I've seen what Aurora can do. I trust her, and I am ashamed that I ever let you convince me otherwise." The sound cut off, but the impact had already detonated. The binders rustled as guests flipped pages faster now, eyes scanning the court rulings, financial reports, and personal correspondences proving exactly what I had claimed. A few people exchanged uncomfortable glances, realizing just how quickly they had been willing to turn against me. Judith finally found her voice, but it was thinner now, less certain. This is manipulation. He was sick. She must have coerced him. Bernard was already prepared. "Your Honor," he said, his voice laced with barely restrained satisfaction. "If you turn to page 7, you'll find the sworn medical affidavits from Dr. Patel and 2 independent neurologists confirming Edward Hayes was of sound mind when he recorded this message and finalized his will." Lauren backed away from her mother slightly, as if realizing the ship was sinking, and she wanted to be nowhere near the wreckage. Judith's composure cracked. "This isn't fair. This isn't—" I stepped down from the stage, my heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. I looked her dead in the eyes, my voice calm but ice cold. "The only unfair thing here, Judith, is how long you got away with manipulating people into believing your lies." I turned to face the crowd, my voice ringing with finality. "For those of you who doubted me tonight, take a good look at the evidence in front of you. And for those of you who so easily jumped to believe the worst of me," I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "I'll remember." Silence, thick, suffocating silence. Then someone at the back began clapping, slowly at first, then another and another, until the entire room was filled with the sound of applause. Not for Judith, not for Lauren, but for me. Judith's eyes darted wildly around the room, searching for support. She found none. Lauren, seeing which way the wind was blowing, slipped quietly toward the exit, and for the first time in her life, Judith Hayes had no more moves left to play. As I turned to walk away, Bernard leaned in, murmuring just loud enough for me to hear, "Your father would be very proud tonight." I exhaled, the weight of the past year lifting from my shoulders. I know. Then I strode out of the ballroom, head high, knowing I had just ended a war and won. The weight of the moment settled over the ballroom, like a storm about to break. Every set of eyes was locked on me now, no longer filled with judgment, but uncertainty, maybe even regret. I let the silence stretch, let them sit with the truth. "You were all so quick to believe the worst of me," I continued, my voice calm but cutting. "You heard one side of a story, a carefully crafted spectacle meant to humiliate me, and without hesitation you assumed it was true. But the truth is right in front of you, undeniable, irrefutable. My father chose me because I earned it, because I built this company alongside him even when you weren't looking." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd as guests flipped through the pages, seeing the evidence with their own eyes. Judith's face was a mask of barely concealed fury, but it was Lauren I focused on now. She had shrunk back, her earlier smugness nowhere to be found. "You had your chance, Lauren," I said, tilting my head slightly. "You were given opportunities time and time again. You refused them. You dismissed this company as boring until it became valuable to you." Judith tried to cut in. This doesn't change anything. The company should still what?" I turned to face her, my tone sharper now. "Go to the person who actually put in the work, the person my father trusted. That's exactly what happened, Judith. You just didn't expect me to fight back." The room was deathly silent now. Margaret Holloway, one of the most influential investors in Dallas, cleared her throat. "I think we've all been terribly misled tonight," she said, glancing around at the other high-profile guests. "Aurora, I owe you an apology, and I suspect I'm not the only one." Judith's lips parted in horror as heads around the room nodded in agreement. I stepped forward, looking her dead in the eye. "You tried to ruin me tonight, but all you did was prove my father right. You showed everyone exactly why he made the decision he did." I smiled then, slow and knowing. "You wanted to take everything from me? Congratulations, Judith. You just lost everything instead." The final blow landed when Bernard approached the microphone, addressing the stunned audience. "I'm afraid there's one more detail to clarify. As per Mr. Hayes's will, any further legal challenges against his estate result in the immediate forfeiture of the inheritance set aside for Judith and Lauren." A strangled sound escaped Judith's throat. "You're lying," she hissed. Bernard simply lifted a single sheet of paper, the official court ruling. "It's all right here," he said, voice measured. "Your repeated attempts to contest the will have voided your claim to Edward Hayes's estate, effective immediately." Judith staggered back, her face crumbling in real time. Lauren looked at her mother, then at me, horror dawning in her eyes as she realized what had just happened. I turned back to the audience, exhaling slowly. "I won't ask you to apologize. I won't ask you to grovel. But I will ask you to remember this moment the next time someone feeds you a carefully constructed lie. Because I assure you, I will." And with that, I placed the microphone down and walked off the stage, leaving Judith and Lauren to drown in the consequences of their own making. Judith's birthday gala was supposed to be my downfall. Instead, it became my turning point. The room had shifted. Where there was once hostility, now there was unease, guilt, and something dangerously close to respect. Then, Christopher Holden, the CYO of our biggest client, rose to his feet. "Venus, I owe you an apology, Haushtau," he said, his voice carrying through the stunned silence. "I should have known better than to believe accusations without proof." His words shattered the tension. More guests flipped through the binders, murmuring among themselves, and then one person at the back started clapping, another joined in, and suddenly applause filled the room. Judith, her face twisted with rage, shoved past the attorneys and stormed toward me, Lauren trailing behind. "How dare you?" she hissed, her voice sharp and venomous. "You turned my birthday into a corporate spectacle." I met her fury with a calm, deliberate smile. "That's rich, coming from the woman who turned it into a smear campaign against me. You tried to destroy my reputation, Judith. You just didn't expect me to fight back." Lauren's voice shook with anger. "You manipulated him when he was dying. You were barely around." Bernard stepped forward, holding up his tablet. "Actually," he said smoothly, "the hospital records show that Venus visited Edward 83 times in his final 6 months. Lauren, 12. Mrs. Hayes, 37. Lauren blanched. Judith flinched. The room went silent again. Then all pretense dropped. "The company was supposed to secure our future," Judith snapped. "Edward promised me we'd always be taken care of." And there it was. The truth laid bare. "And you are," I replied, my voice quiet but firm. "Dad set up trusts for you both. You'll never have financial concerns. But he didn't give you control of his company because he knew what would happen to it if he did." Judith's hands curled into fists. For a second, I thought she might actually slap me. Instead, she grabbed Lauren's arm and spun toward the exit. "This isn't over," she spat. "Actually, it is," Bernard called after her. "Any further legal challenges will be considered vexatious litigation and will seek sanctions." Judith faltered, but she didn't look back. The doors swung shut behind them, and the tension in the room dissolved. Then they came. The apologies, the congratulations, the quiet confessions of doubt. Raymond Fletcher, my father's former CFO, shook my hand, his voice gruff with emotion. "Edward was right about you," he said. "He always said you had your mother's talent, but his head for business." My throat tightened, but for the first time that night, my tears weren't from humiliation. The party slowly returned to normal, but everything had changed. Bernard smirked. "What now?" I straightened my shoulders, looking out at the most powerful business figures in Dallas. "Now," I said, picking up a champagne flute, "now I network." That night was the beginning of everything. 6 months later, Hayes Manufacturing isn't just surviving, it's thriving. Christopher Holden doubled his orders. 3 former clients returned with long-term contracts. And the business community? They don't just see me as Edward Hayes' daughter anymore. They see me for what I really am, the CEO, the rightful heir, and the woman who left no doubt that she earned her place at the top. Hayes Manufacturing didn't just survive, it evolved. We expanded to a second facility in Austin, hired 32 new employees, and secured contracts that cemented our reputation as an industry leader. But the real twist? 2 weeks after the gala, Lauren showed up at my office. No appointment, no warning. She sank into the chair across from me, hands twisting in her lap. "I need a job," she said bluntly. I leaned back, studying her. Lauren, who once scoffed at the idea of working in a boring factory. Lauren, who had stood beside Judith as they tried to tear me down. Why come to me? I asked, waiting for the catch. Her jaw tightened before she admitted, because you're the only one actually succeeding. Everyone in Mom's circle is just pretending. Desperation clung to her words. Judith had burned through most of her personal savings, fighting legal battles she never had a chance of winning, and Lauren's trust fund wouldn't fully mature for another 3 years. Against Bernard's advice, I offered her an entry-level position in marketing. She surprised me by accepting. Even more shocking, she was actually good at it. We weren't friends, and maybe we never would be, but for the first time there was something real between us. Mutual respect. Judith, on the other hand, slithered off to Phoenix, where she was reportedly hunting her next wealthy husband. Our paths haven't crossed since. I doubt they ever will. But the biggest transformation? Mr. For years, music had been my identity, my escape, my purpose. The piano was my constant companion through childhood loneliness, through Dad's second marriage, through the brutal schedule of conservatory and touring. When he got sick, I thought stepping away from performing was temporary. But running Hayes Manufacturing awakened something I never expected. The thrill of leadership, the satisfaction of building something that mattered. I still play, but now it's for myself, not for an audience. Last month I did something Dad would have loved. I founded the Edward Hayes Foundation, dedicated to funding music education in underprivileged schools and mentoring young entrepreneurs. At the launch event, I sat at a grand piano we brought into the factory and played my father's favorite Chopin nocturne. As the notes echoed through the same walls that had built his legacy, surrounded by employees whose futures I now protected, I felt his presence stronger than ever. That night, I understood something. Inheritance isn't about money or power. It's about carrying forward the best of those we've lost while forging our own path. The business community that once doubted me now calls Hayes Manufacturing a model of innovation and integrity. Lauren is finally finding her way. And me? I've learned that I never had to choose between being an artist or a leader. Some legacies aren't stolen, they're earned.